Grab some popcorn and a favorite chair. The love of movies is why we're here. Press play and don't delay. Let film be our guide to a cinematic day. Phil at the movies, from the silver screen to his podcast stream. Phil's covering every movie dream. Phil at the movies. Phil at the movies.
At the risk of sounding hyperbolic, at the risk of recency bias, but for the love of movies, I believe I just saw the horror film of the decade. That needle drop. Welcome back, my friends, to another episode of Phil at the Movies. I'm your host, Phil Walsh, and this is show number 176 of this ongoing podcast that is, of course, for the love of movies. I want to thank you, as always, for taking the time to tune in to today's show. Appreciate your support and friendship as we continue this cinematic journey together. And before I begin with today's review, let me just take this opportunity to say, if you could rate and review this podcast on Apple, it helps a great deal with the pesky algorithm, as well as sharing this podcast with your family, your friends, anybody who you think may need a cinematic philosopher in their life. Yes, pun intended. But on that note, let me begin by saying a few things. 2025 has already been, in my opinion, one of the best years of movies in recent time. And that's coming off of 2024, which had some absolute banger movies. Joker Folie à Deux, excluded from that list. 2023, another phenomenal year. 2022. But there's just been something about this year in particular, whether it's action films, when I think of a movie like Ballerina, when I think of a movie like The Naked Gun, comedies, when I think of superhero films like The Fantastic Four: First Steps, or when I think of a more recent horror film like Sinners. There's been a lot to choose from this year, and certainly a little bit for everybody. And myself included, a movie guy, this has been like a banquet, and I have been eating well this entire year, and we're not through yet. It's only August, we've got a few more months to go, and I still have a number of anticipated films to see before the year is out. But I just walked out of the screening. It's now, I'm recording this on Thursday night, so it's 11:45 here. I got out of the theater a little after 10. And I saw the much anticipated, much discussed, much dissected new horror film by Zach Cregger, Weapons. And when I say dissected, this movie has been put under the microscope ever since the teaser trailer dropped what feels like a long time ago. Because nobody really knows, or nobody really knew, I should say, exactly what this movie is all about. And that's the best way to go into a horror movie, is to go in as blind as possible, particularly when there is a mystery element, like Weapons has at its core. Now, the plot of the film involves the mystery surrounding the disappearance of 17 students from an elementary school. One night at exactly 2:17 a.m., 17 students leave the comfort of their homes, all marching to the beat of some unheard marching order, and disappear into the darkness. The next day at school, one student named Alex is left unscathed, untouched by this ordeal, and is put at the center of this mystery, along with his teacher, Justine, played by the lovely Julia Garner. From then on, it is a question and a quest to try and figure out what happened to these 17 students, where did they go, and what forces are at play, if any. And what I find so deliciously evil about this film is it kept me guessing from the moment it started. I tried to banish any thoughts of what the plot could be, of what happened to these 17 elementary school students, and just went along for the ride. And what works so well with this film, and it's quite diabolical, and it is usually, in my opinion, the mark of a great horror film. The way the film teases us with silliness and some humorous moments, it really does lull us into a false sense of security before dropping the hammer. And when the hammer drops, oh my God, is it terrifying. It is wicked, creepy fun that is unhinged and utterly unleashed. Now, if you have seen Zach Cregger, the director's previous film, Barbarian, that's a wonderful film. It's a deeply unsettling and disturbing movie, but this film, Weapons, obliterates it. It puts it back into its place in the proverbial basement, so to speak. And again, I loved Barbarian, but this movie is on an entirely different level. The way we shift through the points of view of each central character, whether it's Julia Garner's Justine or Josh Brolin's angry father, the story is showing us different moments in time and weaving it all together into this deliciously evil plot that by the end of it has you utterly aghast. I mean, holy smokes, it is one hell of a twisted ride. And to sort of pick up my statement from earlier about a horror film, or this one being the horror film of the decade, this movie is both an entertaining ride. Again, it's a mystery that sort of weaves us in a direction. We think it's going one way and then it goes to another. That is one essential element, I think, for a horror film that kind of jumps to the head of the pack. It has to be entertaining. It has to sort of draw you in and take you on this journey. And then it ultimately has to sort of get its claws into you and leave you mystified and terrified by what you have just witnessed. And that's what this film does in perfect harmony, or perhaps twisted harmony, if you will. Let me say a few things about Julia Garner and Josh Brolin, because they anchor this story with two mesmerizing performances, and they sort of work in concert trying to get to the heart of what happened to the missing students. Julia Garner feeling responsible as the teacher. She's been put in the crosshairs by the community and the angry, grieving parents. Brolin's character is trying to find out what happened to his son, and he's sort of playing a little bit of an amateur sleuth, trying to piece together by using Ring video footage and his own intuition and ingenuity to try to get to the heart of what happened on this fateful night. All of it coming together in this just unhinged and frankly dark story. I mean, again, there are moments of pure horror and humor that kind of go hand in hand, and that kind of eases the tension a little bit. But then just as you kind of catch your breath, the film hits the accelerator, and then it does not let up. And there's wonderful callbacks, or perhaps evil callbacks, if you will, to horror legends. People will notice references to The Shining. There's definitely a feeling of that film's presence on this movie, and I believe even the director said that he took a lot of inspiration from The Shining, so you can kind of see the references and nods. In addition, there is a lot of bloody substance and unsettling allegories going on in this movie, and not to get into the spoilers, because again, I don't want to reveal what the twist is. I don't want to reveal what happens. The movie is working on many different levels. And again, I think that's the mark of a great horror film, and one that sort of stands out is it's an entertaining, thrilling ride that delivers a sense of resolution, if you will. And, you'll pardon me for going back to the Halloween realm, but I think that kind of helps make my case. And again, I'm not equating the two movies here, but just to sort of make my point. Halloween has a thriller aspect to it. We're on this ride from start to finish as Michael Myers is stalking the town of Haddonfield, and ultimately culminating in the showdown with Laurie Strode, ultimately where she is rescued by Dr. Loomis, who seemingly kills the unkillable killer by shooting him 6 times and sending him off the balcony. That is the one aspect of the film, sort of the thriller part of it. The other layer, of course, is the haunting aspect, the idea that evil never dies. And, of course, as we know, having seen the film, Michael is gone by the end of the film, and it's left with an ominous presence that he's not just somewhere, he's everywhere. And you leave the theater, and you leave the movie feeling both entertained by what you have witnessed, but also nervous and looking over your shoulder. That's the same kind of reaction that I had to Weapons, and being someone who loves the Halloween franchise and loves the original film, probably to an unhealthy level. I mean, again, it's my second favorite movie of all time. It's my favorite horror film of all time. If I can evoke that movie as a way of praising this film, I think Weapons has more than done its job. It has delivered something that is thrilling to watch. Just the ride we are going on, trying to get to the bottom of what this mystery is all about, and then ultimately ending the film with a great sense of unease and weariness, and sort of like, oh my God, what did I just witness? What exactly happened here? Because the movie doesn't give you all of the answers. And again, that's another perfect mark. It leaves you wanting more. And so when I look at this film in the totality and what it delivers, apart from being a thrilling ride with great performances, it leaves you with that sense of unease and eeriness, and there's just a creepy factor to this movie that you can't shake. I'm creeped out by what I saw, and there's many moments in this film where you're going to be saying, what the absolute fill in the blank? I mean, it's just utterly unbelievable, and it's one of those moments where you just say, yeah, I have witnessed something worthy here. I have witnessed a piece of greatness. And I know some people say, give it time. How can you make this pronouncement? Again, I go with my gut feeling, and that's what I say. I evoke Halloween as an example here that sort of has that same quality of being both entertaining and utterly terrifying at the same way. Now, in addition to Brolin and to Garner, who are just fantastic. And Garner, there's a case to make, is really the MVP of this film. She just carries it with her just tortured role as this teacher, and she's got her own baggage, and she's trying to work through it, but she's this core tenet where she's just trying to figure out what the hell happened to her students, because she feels responsible and powerless at the same time. But in addition to Brolin and Garner, the film also has a supporting performance by Amy Madigan, who is a wonderful actress who, frankly, we don't see all that much. But if you've seen films like Field of Dreams or Uncle Buck, another personal favorite of mine, she's always a good standout. But in this particular film, it is a tour de force performance. Let me just leave it at that. But God, this movie, the fact that it's set in suburbia, it's in a small town, Maybrook in Pennsylvania. Zach Cregger again has found a way to make the suburbs a terrifying place. And again, there's something about horror movies taking place, in some cases, in broad daylight. And there are some moments here where some of the moments of just pure insanity occur in the middle of the day. That, to me, is, again, another strength where you could sort of strip away the motifs and the themes and sort of the trappings of darkness in the creepy house and just sort of show us something terrifying in broad daylight. Again, I go back to the Halloween reference. That movie does that many times in the original film. But further than that, the fact that this is not set in like a castle or some traditional, scary locale. It's not a fun house. It's not an abandoned amusement park. It is just a small town with a deeply unsettling mystery at its core. Again, that's terrifying, and that's something that could stay with you. And I alluded to it earlier, there being a lot of sort of substance and allegories with this film. I'm really looking forward to more people seeing it, because I think there's a lot to unpack here. And again, that sort of speaks to the film's incredible strength. It's not only just this entertaining ride and leaves you with a sense of kind of an ominous presence by the end, but there's also a lot of other ideas going on. And, it's sort of become fashionable to bash the term elevated horror, because it's sort of is this way of saying, all right, you're just dealing with a story about grief or trauma and using a horror movie to make some point. I think of a film like Bring Her Back from earlier this year, which was a great film, but definitely wore its elevated horror elements of grief and motherhood and trauma on its sleeves. Whereas here, the movie is not so in your face, if you will, about its themes and even its deeper ideas, but there's a lot to unpack here. There's a lot to unpack here just by the nature of it being in a small town and people sort of turning against one another, and this sort of idea of, well, there has to be something ominous going on and sort of pointing fingers and X, Y, and Z. And that, again, that to me is why I love this genre so much, because you can tell these deeper stories in the context and trappings of just a scary movie. And it's even more effective when the themes and greater ideas are sort of layered and not so in your face or spoon-fed, if you will. And again, much like with what Zach Cregger did with Barbarian, the themes are there if you want to go dig for them, if you want to unpack more. You can just simply watch it as an entertaining, scary movie, but the beauty of it is there is much more beyond the thrills and the chills. And again, that's why I think this movie is going to age beautifully and be heralded, I think, as certainly one of the horror films of the year. But I mean, I go as far as to say I think it is the horror film of the decade, just because of the way the mystery ultimately plays itself out and pays off at the very end of the film, while taking us on this terrifying ride that, yes, leaves us both feeling fulfilled and thrilled, but also deeply chilled. And again, that's, to me, the real hat trick of any good horror movie. It can stay with you after the credits roll. And I would just say this, make sure that you fasten your mouth, because by the end of this film, I guarantee you, it will be on the floor of the theater. When I go see this again, and I will go see this again, I am going to have to make sure that my mouth my jaw is good and tight, because, dear God, there are moments in this film. It doesn't even have to be a squeamish moment. There are just moments where you're just utterly aghast at what you're watching, and in the best possible way. So the film is Weapons. I am going to say that, yes, this is, for right now, and there's still a few more films to come out. I did not think anything could pass Sinners, but Weapons has done that for me, insofar as it being the horror film of the year. But I'm going to go a step further and say that I think this is the horror film of the decade, because it just has that creepy it factor, if you will. And to me, it's sort of even more difficult to explain it. You just sort of have to see it in order to understand it. And that's not trying to be a cop-out. I don't want to really spoil this one, because I think you have to just experience this one. You have to go into this movie and just take this ride, because, dear God, it is unlike any in recent memory for me. And the way this film, again, leaves you both feeling thrilled and chilled, that is the hat trick. And for me, I tip my hat to Zach Cregger. He is certainly working on the level of the late great Wes Craven. He's in the legends category, if you will, alongside John Carpenter and more recently people like Osgood Perkins and Jordan Peele. Cregger is a name that is going to be a staple in the modern horror genre. So I adore this film in the best possible way, and it feels sort of funny to say that, but it is just, it's terrifyingly good, and it just gets into your very soul and stays with you. And again, I mean, I was looking around the theater after the end of it, and everyone had the same expression, more or less. It was like, WTF, like, that was terrifying but good at the same time. So a diabolically good job, a diabolically terrifying job. Oh my God. Weapons. Yes, I know, at the risk of sounding hyperbolic, but I'm going to say it. I think this is not only just the horror film of the year, it is the horror film of the decade. And I'm looking forward to more people seeing this film and experiencing this film so we can talk about it more. Let me know in the comments if you have seen this movie yet. What did you think? Did the twist pay off for you? What did you think of some of the WTF moments, shall we say? I have to go see this film again just to pick up on all the extra nuances and moments, and just to experience the hell of a fun, terrifying ride that it was. Oh God, this was a movie, again, went in with sort of no expectations or cautious expectations, and it just exceeded every possible degree, and has left me feeling both thrilled and chilled. Again, not to sound like a broken record, but it was a hell of a night for horror movies, on top of what has been a truly remarkable run, not only this year, but for the last couple of years. And I guarantee we are going to be talking about Weapons for years to come. But that is my review for you today. Thank you, as always, for tuning in, everybody. I'll be back next week, where we'll do this all over again for the love of movies.
Feels covering every movie dream. Feel at the movies makes every movie